We're live. Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning to a special guest we have that we all know very well, and I'm sure the viewers will recognize Asia. This is my sister, Sano's daughter, Michael's cousin, all in the family. Yeah. Well, welcome, Asia, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Good morning. Tell us where you are right now.
I am in my home, and there is some noise in the background going on, and that is why I am here today, here to talk about my ongoing renovation. I am doing my best to make it towards a net zero renovation, or at least as close as I can come to a net zero.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I apologize for the noise, but not sorry about it.
That's okay. It's ambience.
Yeah. So just quickly before you kind of launch into the meat and potatoes, where in the city do you live?
I live in Renfrew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. What type of house?
I live in a bungalow, a 1950s bungalow, and we have a secondary suite in the basement. Nice legal secondary suite.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So pretty standard bungalow on a 50-foot lot.
Mm-hmm.
What year? Like built in the 50s?
Yes. So it's a raised bungalow that
55-ish, 56.
I think 54. I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Dan and Sano are very familiar with it. They've done a number of renovations on this house. Still are. Dan was over here on the weekend helping me install some lights. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So 50s bungalows, I guess, not foreign to any of us here. Michael, you're in a 50s or 60s?
1957 bungalow. Yeah, that we renovated as well.
Yeah. I'm in a 1957 bungalow.
I've got
SIPS
spring
panel.
chicken in 1960.
Oh, so you've got a newer one.
Yeah, I got the new model.
and sorry, Sano, you mentioned also you're in a 1957 bungalow as well.
1957 bungalow. Mine is unique in that it was original. It's one of the first SIPS panels. And if anybody knows what SIPS panels are, they are kind of sandwich panels, prefabricated sandwich panels, which is now kind of the is becoming in vogue again. That's how they do the prefabricated or modular wall systems are made out of these SIPS panels. And so mine was one of the original, sort of original like fir plywood and old style, but new. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And just to say a little bit a commentary on the 50s bungalows, because a lot of clients asked about this. Prior to about in the early 50s, CMHC came out with standards for the first time, and so they came out with standards for wiring, plumbing, copper plumbing, waste plumbing, etc. And so the quality of materials in that era was actually quite good because you would get the updated CMHC wiring, so you had grounded wiring, and you would get often you would get grounded wiring. Sometimes you wouldn't, but if they were up to the standard, you got the grounded wiring. You got copper plumbing instead of galvanized plumbing, or cast iron, and sometimes even copper waste lines. Some people might take their copper waste lines out and go to the bank today because I guess that's kind of valuable. And reasonable insulation, and although I'm not sure, they didn't really have double glazed windows, so that kind of it was a new standard. And so you also had things like 3/4 inch hardwood, oak hardwood. So if you bought a house that's in the 50s, in Calgary at least, in that era, you typically got really good bones, good standard, good bones. And you might have to upgrade the windows and things like that. So that kind of sets the platform. That's sort of the platform that Asia's launching from. You've stripped back some of the things, but I'll let you get into it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're doing a net zero, or as close as you can get renovation.
Yeah.
What taking a 50s bungalow that was probably, when you started, not a very energy efficient home. Like, what are the components that you are looking at changing?
Yeah, and Dad, Sano, I think one of the things that you touched on there was that we're doing a retrofit. We didn't want to tear the house down. Partially, we like it. My husband and I, we really love our house, and it does have good bones, and we've done a couple of renovations over the years, and it's a little bit of a mishmash. We've redone our windows. We have big bay windows in the front, and upgraded those to triple pane windows. But we kind of wanted to redo the whole thing. So at the end of this project, we really want to get as close to net zero as we can, which means that we want to be able to produce as much energy on our own property via solar panels as we use. Part of that, one of the tricks there is that we have tenants in the basement and we don't really have very much control over how much energy they use. Sometimes we have tenants who are never here and they don't ever, they don't consume very much energy. Sometimes we have tenants who are, gamers and are here all the time and have their computers on and are taking up a ton of electricity. So it's kind of a balance, and there's not a whole lot of control we have over that. So when I say as much as we can, there's only so much you can do, and a lot of it comes down to personal habits, and that is kind of the first step in the component of your energy use is your personal habits and trying to reduce your consumption, and that's part of the reason we didn't want to tear down our house and build a bigger house, because only two of us live here and our little dog, and we don't need a lot of space. We live comfortably in our little bungalow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So what are you doing to the walls, Asia? Like, tell us about the what you're.
Yeah, we are insulating from the outside. We didn't want to tear down the walls from the inside. We thought from the beginning that it would be easier to go from the outside and insulate from the outside. It is something I think that has become more popular now. It gives you, first of all, a chance to kind of see what's happening. We had some stucco there that I think stucco was put on top of what was there in the 1950s. So we have a couple of layers on our house. We have whatever was there in the 1950s, and then we have a layer of stucco on top of that. There is some insulation there, which we've just realized in the last couple of days. And then we found out was some asbestos in the stucco, and there's also asbestos in our attic, or there was after we took it out. And we didn't want to have to move out of our house while all of this was going on. So we wanted to kind of retain that, I don't know, we'll say level of comfort, but I'm not sure that is, that it's been very comfortable. So we didn't want to have to move out. So we decided to go from the outside. It also allows us to go and seal up all of the air holes. One of the things that you can do if you want to get some help with funding and some rebates from the government, however insignificant they may be in this whole process, is you can get a pre-retrofit EnerGuide evaluation. And one of the things that all of that kind of shows is how many gaps there are in your house. When you add them all up, and all of the little penetrations that there are in your house really shows how much air is seeping out of your house. And I think they told us that when you add them all up, there is like a 9-foot by 9-foot hole in our house if you were to kind of combine them all together.
Yeah.
So when you have Shaw or Telus come and drill a new hole in your house each time that you switch providers, or when you back when there was telephone wires, and then we switched to cable, and then we switched to fiber optic, and each time they drill a new hole in your house, but they don't take the old one out and they don't seal it up. So each time there's something new and there's a new hole in your house, and they add up.
So did they do a door, like a pressurized door test?
Yes.
Can you explain that a little bit? Tell us what that was involved in that.
Sure. I was there when they did it, and they kind of walked me through it. They sealed up my door and put a blower in the door, and they went around and essentially looked for where there were gaps. When they blow the air out of my house, they can tell where there is air coming in, usually around cracks in the windows or doors or your outlets. And they can tell where there is more air coming in than because your house is pressurized.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I mean, it's interesting. You want to eliminate that. And when you seal it up, in fact, in more of the modern homes, they have air-to-air heat exchangers that circulate the air. And I don't know, did they recommend putting one of those in your house, Asia, or do you have one already?
Yeah, they are going to be putting in a heat exchange.
Heat exchanger.
Yes, there's the two. There's the energy and the heat exchanger. Now I can't remember.
Yeah, the heat pump, and then
an HRV.
Yes, an HRV.
HRV, yeah.
Yeah, versus the ERV.
And what that does is it blows fresh air into your home, and it heats the air coming in with the air that's going out. So it's just a heat exchanger, heat recovery ventilator, HRV.
There you go.
So heat the air coming in with the air going out, so that you're not losing, energy. I mean, you're not blowing in cold air.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. So you have to be careful when you're doing that. Having done a few of these back, as early as the 70s, because some buildings need to be ventilated somewhat. So you can get, depending on where the dew point is in your wall, can cause some challenges. So if you insulate, maybe too much, and you don't have the proper vapor barrier, then you want to have the dew point fall on the right, like on the inside of the vapor barrier. If it falls inside the wall, it can cause issues. So there's some science that needs to be evaluated there when you're doing that renovation.
Yeah, and that's why if you seal up all of those holes, then you're not going to have any air exchanged, and you're just going to be sealed in a little box, which is why you need to have some form of air exchange or heat exchange, because you don't want to just be sealed up in a little box.
And it's interesting that in new construction now they're changing. So you would have a vapor barrier on the inside of your wall, and then whatever amount of insulation. And in new construction now, they're finding that because they foam insulate the walls, and when you get, again, it depends on where the dew point falls inside the wall. They don't actually use a vapor barrier, and you'll see then in a lot of construction that they'll wait for the inspector to come. They'll put the vapor barrier in after the inspector leaves, and they'll slash the vapor barrier because practically they recognize that actually causes a problem, but the code hasn't caught up to practice. So interesting.
Also, with that test that you did, it's not something that everybody's going to do prior to a renovation, and there's got to be some costs associated. Is there some funding or grants available to help with these energy efficiency retrofits?
There is some, and when I did it, I was not fully educated on how it works. So there is the pre-Energuide retrofit and the post-Energuide evaluation, retrofit evaluation, they cost usually between $500 and $600, and you can get reimbursed for them as long as you complete some eligible home renovation that brings your energy efficiency up, or that does something to make your home more energy efficient. There are a whole slew of things that you can do. Some of them just involve making your home more energy efficient. So you could be increasing your insulation, you could be replacing your windows, you could be adding solar panels. The ones that I am doing, all of the things that I am doing apply, but the ones that I applied for the grant and the funding for, so there's a grant and there is a loan, 0% loan. The ones that I have applied for that for are the insulation, the air sealing, and attic insulation. And after you do those, then you can apply to get the post retrofit Energuide evaluation, and then you get all of your money back for the retrofit Energuide evaluations, and you can get the grant, and you can potentially get a 0% loan. So there is funding available, but it is not super straightforward. And there are a bunch
all
of
the work first.
You have to do all of the work first. So it's not really a loan. It is, you have to have the money available to pay for it first, and then they will pay you back, and then you pay them back.
Well, that's not straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah. So
In typical government fashion.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So the way that we went about it, and I guess maybe this is a good time to kind of explain my reasoning, and luckily I have brought my husband on board. We do have the same values when it comes to this, but we have noticed, as I'm sure many people have, the increasing costs of electricity prices and gas prices. And we managed to lock in our electricity at a very reasonable rate about 2.5 years ago. But everything else, regardless of our reasonable electricity rate, even our gas prices have gone up. And we have seen that they probably only will continue to go up. I doubt they will ever go down. And our little piece of land, which we own, well, we don't own it, the bank owns it, but we have purchased a home. And so this is something that we can control. And it is very, we can't control how other people vote. We can't control what the electricity prices are going to do, or the gas is going to do, or, we can't control what wars are happening, but we can control what we do with our home and our land. So we are going to try to focus on our little piece of land, and maybe we won't have to pay energy bills or gas bills in the near future. And it is going to cost us a pretty penny, but these are our priorities, and they may never actually pay off. Who knows? We'll see. But it is something that we can control. And so this is just kind of where we put our priorities for now.
Well, it does make a ton of sense, because you don't have to, even when you're paying your mortgage, at least a portion of that goes to the principal. When you pay utility bills, it just goes out the door, and you never see it back.
Yeah.
The comment that I'll make is that because I do have almost a net zero home with solar, is that they have raised the administration and distribution charges that the utilities charge you to such a point that even on months where I'm net zero, where I produce as much as I consume, you can still pay in a house like mine, which is about 4,000 feet, about $400 just in distribution and administration cost. So it's significant, as is the water consumption, by the way, water and sewer, and you know, they've increased that, and they just added in Calgary, they just added a stormwater charge. I'm not sure if anybody caught that, but it's an additional, no, I'm not sure, $30 a month, maybe. You know, you were paying for domestic water, you're paying for sewer, which is related to, you know, your water consumption, and now you pay for storm as well. That's the water running off your street into the catch basin. So yeah, they keep tacking it on.
Yeah, it's I do find that ridiculous, the administration cost, and I, you know, hopefully they actually are able to reduce that eventually, or whoever sort of, I guess the city of Calgary kind of governs NMAX. Yeah.
Yes, that's a good point. You know, it's a city, it's a municipal corporation, so there's, you know, we have something to say about that to our councillors, and you know, you can make your voices heard at City Hall.
Sorry, Asia, I've got a question. So prior to you going down this road of you know, trying to strive to create a net zero home, you had a legalized basement suite.
Yep.
Right? And you still do. Does the basement suite get, and the status of it being legal, does it get affected by the work that you're doing?
Good question. Our when we went to legalize our suite, there were two routes that we could take, and because we had an existing suite, we went about it. We essentially said, "Hey, City of Calgary, we acknowledge that we have an existing an existing suite, and we are going to bring it up to code. We're going to tell you that we have it. You come in and tell us what we need to do. And there are two options. Either we have to do what you say, or we have to get rid of it." And that was the route that we took. And they said, "Okay, here are the things that you have to do." And they allowed us to maintain, because we had a grandfathered suite, they allowed us to just have one furnace. So we did everything else. We drywalled we smoke sealed the two suites, so they're separated from each other.
Yep.
The one thing that is a bit of a gray area, I'll say, is that we haven't, we are installing a new heat pump, which is something that we were going to do anyways because we don't have air conditioning and heat, climate change, all of that. It's getting hot. And we haven't gone back and said, "Hey, do we have to install a new heat pump for the basement suite as well?" Because it's grandfathered in, and we, to be honest, don't really want to go down that road. I don't want to have to install another furnace and another heat exchanger and another heat pump because we can't. But there just isn't room for it. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no. It's, I think like this, and this is like a bad soap opera of affordable housing crisis and the city of Calgary being difficult, and the people on the front lines of the city of Calgary permitting and all this stuff, and inspectors not actually, I don't think, being aligned with like the actual objectives and mission of the city of Calgary, you know, and I just, you know, like I can fear a little bit of sense a little bit of like fear and like kind of apprehension in your voice, and that shouldn't be the case, like, because what you're doing is like amazing, you know, and so like to have like that unknown and whatever is, I think it's not right, especially when you're like, got a housing unit that's like fantastic. It's a lower income housing unit that you're providing the city.
Absolutely, Michael. And to your point, you know, when we, I think back in 2010, Calgary Real Estate Board, we did a study on affordable housing, and we got some of the best people available at the time around the table. And the conclusion was that to provide the best solution for affordable housing was to legalize basement suites, and provided they were owner occupied in all zones. So the point was that we understood and uncovered that there was a supply of housing that was being hidden from us because they were thought to be illegal. And so people were, you know, not renting them out, or, you know, there'd be like widows in R1 areas who were like, you know, I have a basement suite, it's been there since 1955, but, you know, it's not legal. And so they were just sitting empty. And so there's a supply of housing that exists in Calgary that are in people's basement suites that we've villainized in a way because of, you know, sometimes legitimate safety issues, but, you know, we could be a little bit more lenient and more pragmatic about solving some of these safety issues so that we can provide, you know, a better housing supply of housing, which is in dire need today.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman who has some involvement with the SDAB, Subdivision Development Appeal Board, and he said there's been discussions there he's been involved with where some members of that board, I mean, there'd be maybe it comes down to parking. You don't have enough parking on site, and you know, you're 3 centimeters shy of having the additional stall required, and he's having to convince these people that it's the right thing to do to approve it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, I mean, there's just a complete blind spot as far as
common sense is not that common.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
So Asia, another question is, you may have touched on this already, but is your tenant, like, do you have a tenant right now existing downstairs?
We do, yeah.
Okay, and so like through this whole process, they're also still living.
Yes.
Wow.
It was really interesting, actually, because we had some people, they were amazing tenants, fantastic tenants, that their lease was up right before we were going to start the renovations.
Yeah.
Before we were supposed to start our renovations. And we were going to just kind of lease it to them for storage. They were students and we're going to be moving away for work. And then I was convinced not to, because housing is needed for people to actually live in.
Yeah.
And we actually increased our rent a little bit to what I am told is, and what I hear on the news is actually still significantly below. We rent out our 2-bedroom basement suite for what a 1-bedroom basement, or what a 1-bedroom goes for in the city of Calgary. And we include all of our utilities. So it is, and we have 2 tenants. Yeah, we have 2 tenants now who, and we told them it's, you know, full disclosure, we're going to be doing renovations. And they were more than happy to find a place that they weren't living with 2 other men that are, so they are happy, and we're happy with them. They're great. We've almost always had really good tenants, and I think partially because we live here, and you know, we get along with them, and we have the ability to kind of vet them, and we're pretty we're pretty stringent because we know we have to live with them. We don't live directly with them, but we have to live with them on the same property. So yeah,
that's cool. So I got another question, and I'm sorry, guys, you guys probably have other questions too. But when you're doing the exterior insulation, what thickness, what materials are you using again?
Okay. These are some specifics that I will have to kind of remember. So we have changed things a little bit. We've taken off originally the plan was to just stick stuff on right outside of all of the stuff. That has changed. Now we are taking off all of the, taking off everything essentially. and now we are using Roxol, Rockwool goes by different names, but we're using Rockwool. We are going to be sealing around all of the, we'll say, penetrations to make sure that it's air sealed. And then we're going to be, so I think that is our R14, I think is the Roxwool. Roxol.
Rockfall. Yeah.
Roxol. And then we are going to be using the EIFS system. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you actually pronounce it.
And sorry, say that name again.
It's EIFS.
Yeah.
So exterior insulation something system.
EIFS, yeah, it's like stucco over a kind of sealed styrofoam,
Panel or something.
Yeah, it's a built-up styrofoam panel. It's sealed on the inside, sealed previous to the stucco going on. So, and then they kind of wrap it around. So it's actually a sealed unit of styrofoam with stucco applied on the outside of it. It's called an EIFS system. And it's a good solution for a lot of these bungalows. If you just wanted to add insulation on the outside. Yeah, so you're doing it the right way.
Cool.
Yeah, and then that I think I was told is R22.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then there's two there. You can also add to that like a mesh to keep the birds and things from. Apparently, woodpeckers like to get through it and try and peck out the insulation. So we're adding like a mesh to that so that it protects it for quite a long while.
That's a good point. We have that issue. We have woodpeckers who they like the sound. It's like a drum. They like the sound of it. So they get up there and they And when it's not so bad, but when it's 25 feet up, it's hard to get at and repair. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's great.
Okay, another question. Are you doing anything? Well, I'll step back. When these bungalows were built, here I am in Glendale, if 1957 bungalow, they had huge metal louvre, like window covers, basically. That kind of like shaded, like really kind of took off the edge of evening sun into the house, and we got a huge bay window just in front of me. Are you doing anything like that, or no? It's just kind of like managing the heat with the heat pump and stuff like this.
No, we only have one south-facing window though.
Yeah.
So that is not a huge problem for us. On the west side, we do have some big windows, and we have the coating on those. We have the.
Is it a low E coating?
Yeah, we have a low E coating, whatever that is made of.
Yeah. But you also had an awning on that west window as well, I remember.
We have an awning over our doors, but not over the windows.
Okay.
Yeah. But the low E coating does help. We got those windows replaced a couple of years ago, and it makes a huge difference with the sun, especially in the summertime. It does make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even though you're just partway through the renovation, is there anything, if you could take a step back a couple months, anything you would have done differently with respect to the products or the end goal?
A couple things probably. We originally were going to disconnect from our gas entirely. And I think, so we were going to get our heat pump and then not get rid of our we have a high efficiency furnace. We also have a fairly new water heater, and we were going to get rid of our gas water heater because, like Sano said, the distribution charges are a good portion of your electricity or your NMAX bill or your So one way to get rid of those, portion of those, is to get rid of your bill, to disconnect from the gas. So we were going to get an air source water heater as well. However, our water heater is only a couple of years old, and our furnace, thank you, is fairly new, and it's in very good condition. It's probably 15 years old, but it's high efficiency, and it is been kept well, and it's very efficient. So at a certain point, when it gets down to probably about -5, it is more economical for the for the furnace to kick in, as opposed to the heat pump. And even though the heat pump is very, very efficient, in terms of financials, it actually is more economical because in Alberta, natural gas is so cheap compared to electricity. It is more efficient for your for your furnace to turn on.
Yeah.
So we hadn't really talked to anybody who actually has them working, like both, like has all of the systems working together in tandem and has like fiddled with, what temperatures the heat pump works at and, turned them on and that kind of thing. So I think had we done a little bit more research, but to be honest, like there aren't a ton of people who have done this. And so I think that, and then, yeah, so that probably was the first thing. We kind of jumped in with 2 feet, and that was, I mean, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with going full steam ahead, but I think once in the future, so maybe we are also getting solar panels because we want to be able to produce enough electricity. We also can't currently produce enough electricity to offset all of that if we were to switch all of our gas to electricity. We have plans in the future to maybe redo our garage. And so when we do that, we can put more solar panels on our garage. And yeah, so down the road, maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think there's still a good case for gas because of the low cost in Alberta. So that's I'm glad that you kept that option open, because even though there is a connection fee, I think in the future, and especially with the current government has a bit of a mandate to, stay aligned with gas production. I think we'll find that becomes, if not becomes more affordable, at least holds the line. Yeah. Whereas electricity, it can increase pretty dramatic, and then you're stuck. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Asia. I think we're kind of at our time, aren't we?
Yeah, we're bumping up against it here. So thanks for joining, Asia, and we'll look forward to maybe seeing you on the live stream again sometime.
Yeah.
And Michael,
yeah, you make us look better. Anyway, thanks everybody.
Okay, yeah, thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.